atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a Kamen Rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Broadcasting across the globe from Two Guys' Room, this is Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me, as always, my lovely co-host and editor.
Hello, I am Rex.
I almost feel like we should give you a producer credit instead. I feel like if I said, and joining me today, my lovely co-host and producer.
See, that just sounds strange now.
Are you sure? It sounds more like built. Like we got structure.
Yeah, but it's like I'm the co-host and editor. Like I feel like it's an accurate description.
This is true. I think technically I fall under producer credits if we want to get technical. I don't know. I don't really know the whole roles of podcasts. It's kind of a weird thing. Like, obviously, there's, like, the hosts, which you and I obviously are, I think. I hope.
Yeah, I think.
Are we hosts? Are we hosting this?
I think so.
Are people listening to us right now?
Hopefully. If not, then that's sad. We're just speaking into a massive echo chamber.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. Have you ever thought about that? Like, maybe we are nothing, but just in a simulation.
Oh, God.
Maybe we're not real. Maybe none of this is real.
What are you, American Koji Suzuki now?
Perhaps everything is everywhere all at once, but nowhere at the same time.
Never speak again, never cook again.
And can you believe it? It's a new episode of Kaiju Conversation once again.
That's crazy, bro.
And today we're talking about the meaning of life, clearly. You know, I think I've already caused enough problems. I've thrown into question, like, what actually is going on. Like, perhaps none of this is real. What if that's accurate?
What is reality? What does it mean for something to be real?
Let me ask you this question. What is love? Rex, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more.
Stop making music references.
You know, it's funny you bring up music references because I definitely saw a musical today.
Oh, Wicked?
I did, yes. It's almost like I told you that I saw Wicked.
No way.
Which was...
it might also be the only musical movie out right now.
Moana 2 is out.
Oh, that's right. That exists.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a single person talk about it, but it'll still probably do better than Nosferatu.
When does that... That comes out, like, on Christmas, doesn't it?
In your country, yes. In mine, it's next year.
Oof. See, I really want to watch Wicked. I just don't know if I'll be able to go with somebody or not.
You mean Nosferatu?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I did just say Wicked. I did go to Wicked with somebody. I don't know if I can get that somebody to agree to go to Nosferatu with me, but I also feel like I need to watch the original one too before I go see the new one. Like, I feel like that's
Nosferatu. I'm so hyped.
Like, that one, it genuinely makes me excited. Like, that looks like it's gonna be good.
It looks great. It looks fantastic. I'm so hyped.
It kind of reminds me of, like, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, but, like, obviously it's not like The Last Voyage of the Demeter, obviously. But, like, And I enjoyed Last Voyage of the Demeter. I did. And I'm somebody who, like, my vampire experience is mostly Japanese vampires. So, like, for me, like, it's just something that just interests me, right? Japanese vampires and then European vampires, which I guess is the most accurate version of a vampire if you're going to be technical here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Nosferatu visually, it kind of reminds me a bit of like what the Coppola film was doing, but not quite to the extreme of that, where that film is marvelous in that it's a visual marvel. It is. Now, Coppola was firing on all cylinders for the visual presentation of that film.
And you're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula, right?
The 1994 one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Danny told me that there was a scene in there that, like, in the sky you could see, like, eyes, and it was a reference to Qui-Gon.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's cool. That's cool if it's a reference to Qui-Gon.
See, I would love to do something like that because I think that whole, like,
you should honestly watch that movie. It's a good adaptation of Dracula, but like visually, it's just a marvel, and I think you'd enjoy it just for the visual presentation.
Probably, I'm a sucker for visuals. Like, I'm going to be honest with you, Wicked.
Okay, to give you like some context, like there's one shot that's absolutely incredible when Jonathan Harker, like the protagonist, is heading to Dracula's castle at the beginning, and he's on a train, and it's a shot of a miniature train, but in the foreground, the ground is a book that's meant to be his journal, because he's journaling as he's on the train.
Oh, so it's like a...
It's like I think it was like a 20-foot prop or something like that of the book, and the train track is going along the book.
So it's like a visual. It's very visual in its storytelling.
Yes,
essentially.
Yes.
Okay, I can appreciate a film like that. So actually, on that topic, so talking a little bit about Wicked, weird, right? Kaiju Conversation talking about Wicked, wild. Definitely a film that's going to get nominated for some Oscars. I'm calling it now. It's going to be set design and it's going to be costume design.
The production design does legitimately look really good from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's and I told my friend who I went with, I was like, yeah, this film's definitely going to get nominated. But she, after the movie was over, she like leaned in to me and was like, "You're such a film nerd," and I was like, "Really? What was your first guess?" And she was like, well, anybody who like verbally, audibly says, "Oh my God, the lighting in this scene is very good" during a movie is a film nerd. And I was she, that's kind of her thing. She likes to make fun of me. And it was because there was a scene where, so Wicked is the prequel to Wizard of Oz. I think. The whole thing about Wizard of Oz is like, is it in Dorothy's dream or is it real? But the idea of Wicked kind of ruins the mystery of that. Because in theory, there would be no... Also, I don't know. I like Wizard of Oz. I don't like the idea that Glenda's actually like... Like, there's a whole thing to it. And I'm not going to spoil all of this plot. But there's a scene where the Wicked Witch of the West and Glenda, the Good Witch, are like they're teenagers or they're students, like they're young, and they go to this dance, this like ballroom dance place, and the Wicked Witch of the West is late, and she shows up late, and she starts dancing by herself, and everybody's laughing at her and like looking at her funky and whatnot. And then Glenda walks onto the dance floor and starts dancing with her as like a sign of like, you're one of, like, I'm your friend and I'm here for you. And what happens is the lighting on Glenda goes from like her skin tone to a very green hue. So like in the whole movie, like, there's a lot of discrimination because she's green and she's the only green person. And so the fact that, like, the lighting in that scene turned her green while she was dancing with her, I thought was genius, because that's a visual style of storytelling, right? Like, instead of saying, oh, she's joining her, she's coming with her, we see that visually in how she's lit, right? She's lit to look like her. She has a green hue on her skin. That way, her and the Wicked Witch of the West can match. And I thought that was just genius, right? And so stuff like that, I was just like, man, that's really good. And I appreciated. That being said, Ariana Grande is very annoying. Her voice just drives me up the wall. She's a beautiful singer, don't get me wrong. She's got great vocals, but her talking just drives me up the wall.
I have no stake in this battle.
She was probably the least favorite. That and the CGI animals, I think, were the two things that I would put at least favorite things about the movie. It's definitely not going to get nommed for best special effects.
Damn. R.I.P. Truly the one they're going for, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we get too wrapped up in Wicked, Rex, how have you been?
I've been pretty good for the most part. I mean, it's been a bit of an interesting week, you know. Kind of been all over the place because shipments at the place I work has been delayed, so my roster's been kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, we did some filming on Sunday, so day after the last recording. That was fun. Was there for about 8 hours. Got incredibly sunburnt by the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
I am still peeling right now.
Gross. Very gross.
It is. Yeah, outside of that, there hasn't been too much else that I can recall.
I mean, fair enough. No, nothing exciting going on. I mean, you're out of school, so surely you have more free time.
It honestly has not felt like it. I'm gonna be real. It has not felt like I've had more free time.
That's depressing.
I know. I agree. Outside of that, how's the impermanently busy life of one Mr. Thomas?
Well, I've been working a lot, as you have established, with the holidays coming up like Black Friday and whatnot. Well, Black Friday's came and gone, so it's Thanksgiving. But because of all that, been working a lot. I ended up pulling 53 hours last week. So I've been very busy. I got 2 interviews sent off to Jacob at Kaiju United, so those interviews should be coming out hopefully soon, maybe by the time this episode's out. But they're actually interviews that I conducted, so they should be out. And, I got 2 more things out. That'd be exciting.
Nice.
Did I say that I rapped on Sharkdemic last week?
Think so, yes.
I think so. Yeah, so no, nothing really there. Actually, no, I got the commentary done. It was not wrapped yet, but it is officially wrapped now. Unfortunately, due to how busy I've been, I was not able to get digging deeper underground on the set due to just scheduling and whatnot. But that is going to be included on a future release. What it is, I don't really know yet. Obviously, Black Friday, which means Thanksgiving, happened. I went over to my boss's, had dinner, sat around, played with the kids. The kids love me.
Wait, Black Friday is like an actual holiday? I thought it was
It's just to buy stuff, but people kind of treat it as a holiday.
Right.
But outside of that, I've been busy.
Of course.
What can I say? Except, Rex, have you watched any Tokusatsu recently?
See, it would have been a no until earlier today when someone from actually the KC server implored me to watch the brand new episode of Ultraman Arc, and I'm like, screw it, why not? And
So
I
you
find
watched-
out I watched an episode of Ultraman Arc, and it was a fun little MechaGodzilla tribute, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a Gomez episode.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty fun, and actually made me want to watch more of Arc, honestly.
I've heard a lot of good things about Arc.
Yeah, it was legitimately a nice little like contained story for that episode of like a father whose daughter is like trying to become a news reporter, and he's just trying to help her in the small ways that he can. It was nice. I really liked it. Outside of that, though, there hasn't really been any tokusatsu that I've been watching. I did forget to mention last time that I watched Akira Kurosawa's Sanjuro in theaters. That was very cool.
See, I still need to see Sanjuro.
I loved it. I legitimately loved it. I liked it more than Yojimbo.
Really?
Yes. But I think the reason I like it is because, I'm by that point I'm invested in Sanjuro's story thanks to Yojimbo. Like specifically what I liked about Sanjuro was how Sanjuro's arc in the movie feels like the natural extension of the character from where he went in Yojimbo.
Well, that's good to hear.
Like it takes where his arc in Yojimbo and goes to the next step of that. It's great. I loved it. It was an amazing movie. Genuinely, alongside Seven Samurai as like my favorite Kurosawa film.
Really?
I loved it. I loved Sanjuro. It was so good.
Well, that's good to know. That kind of implores me to watch it sooner rather than later.
You should.
I own it. I have it. I just need to watch it.
Watch it. It is so good. But yeah, outside of that, that's pretty much it.
That's pretty tame.
Look, man, in the moments I do watch other things, it's mainly just Gundam at the moment, and that's more or less it.
Gundam, you don't watch a lot, do you?
Hey, you're one to talk.
Am I?
Yeah, what have you seen? Exactly.
Next question.
Exactly.
I have not had time. I have not had time to watch anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I'm busy.
Okay.
I've been working.
Yeah, I do that too.
Working.
Yeah.
And driving.
Well, I don't
and
drive,
hanging out
but
with
I catch
a friend.
public transport, so that's basically driving, but takes up more time.
And I've been hanging out with a friend.
That's very cool. I hang out with friends as well.
I hang out with a very good friend.
So what are we covering today?
Well, it is December.
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho is right. You are one. So, with that being said, maybe we should dive into something a little festive.
Are we watching Ultraman Ace?
No. What do you think about Krampus?
The
Does that
Doherty
count?
movie?
Yeah. Could we cover that? It's produced by
Probably not,
Legendary.
I don't know.
Distributed by Warner or Universal. It's got Doherty, who wrote and directed it. Zach Shields worked on it. Thomas Tull worked on it.
Damn.
Got a lot of people from the Legendary Godzilla films.
Damn,
By that, I
what do you
mean
know?
3.
Hey, that's a lot. That's more than one.
Okay. Is that what you... No, never mind. Never mind. Oh, never mind. You aren't wrong.
Exactly.
So what are we covering? If we're not doing Ultraman Ace and we're not doing Krampus, what could we be covering?
I don't know. Are we covering a Godzilla film? A lot of them came out in December.
No, we're done with Godzilla. I need a break
okay.
from the big
Real.
G. You know, King Kong '05 is kind of Christmassy.
Yeah, but that one's 3 hours long.
Okay, and?
We're going to be here all year if we cover that.
Well, eventually we'll have to.
That's true. But
why not now?
Because we don't have all year to record today, I'm afraid.
Well, then what? I mean, I think King Kong '05 is a great choice. What other possible alternatives do we have?
Well, if we go on the Kong line, there's a bunch of other Kong-ish movies, if you know what I mean.
Like Kongsploitation?
Yeah, that stuff.
Oh, what about the Mighty Peking Man? We did cover Super Inframan.
I wish I had that.
Oh.
I wish I did.
So, it could be Konga or Konga TNT.
Those movies exist.
Mighty Gorga?
I forget that's even a thing.
It is a thing. How about Queen Kong?
Again, don't own it.
Okay. Are we doing like Kong Skull Island? Like we've covered GXK, I've covered GVK.
What do you want me to fall asleep?
Maybe. Okay, so maybe we talked about musicals. What about the Mighty Kong?
Wouldn't that be funny? Wouldn't that be fun?
I'm starting to run out of ideas here.
Well, I've got one for you.
Let's hear it.
And it's kind of fitting because it came out just 2 days before Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho?
Is that a Kongsploitation movie?
I don't know.
Because I ain't never heard of that one. But I was talking about Yeti, giant of the 20th century.
Oh boy.
You're not even going to attempt to pronounce the Italian title, are you?
Nope.
I will. Yeti il gigante del 20 secolo. I don't know. I don't have the slightest of a clue if that's accurate or if that's just... I hope it's not racist.
But it was released December 23rd of 1977.
This is very true.
Now, okay, just throwing it out there, on the title card, it's actually called Yeti, the Giant of the 20th Century.
Yabba dabba do.
But that's like saying The Transformers, the movie. A little obnoxious.
Semantics.
So, where do we... Okay, so yeah, we are covering Yeti, Giant of the 20th Century. I have a very interesting history with this movie, let me tell you.
Okay, I guess we'll start there.
So, do you remember Kaiju Weekly?
Yes.
So they covered this movie. No, they didn't cover this movie. They just talked about this movie a lot. And specifically the fact that there was a giant special effect nipple built to inflate and get hard and deflate. And so there was a whole Yeti nipples joke. And I was somebody who latched onto that. So every week when they did their mailbag, I would give them a Yeti nipple mailbag thing. And so
I was shocked when I realized it wasn't just a close-up of the suit actor's nipple. I'm going to be real. I was shocked.
And so, like, one of the things, I know this was a statement I once made. So, like, plot twist, I use a blue Yeti microphone. So, like, the nickname for my microphone is literally my Yeti nipple. We also covered this movie on Kaiju Quarantine 2 Trash Mountain. It was one of the films we did commentate over. I don't remember who did that one. I know I did a couple posters for it, for like promotional stuff, but I don't remember who actually was there for that one. I want to say it was Travis, Nathan, and like one other person. I don't remember. But it's very poetic that we're finally covering this movie, because this has been on my radar. I have like 2 copies of it too. I have the DVD and a Blu-ray copy.
Yeah, but you have at least 2 copies of almost everything.
I try not to.
So he claims.
I would be financially ruined at that point.
All right, Mr. How many copies of 98 in 2014 minus and every Godzilla movie under the sun, in fact?
Shut up.
I'm not wrong.
So, I would highly recommend anybody who's listening to this episode go listen to our King Kong 76 episode, because that's kind of where this movie starts.
Right, yeah.
Oddly enough, there's a huge wave of Kong-influenced films following 1976.
Right.
Which,
I mean, it's kind of fitting given King Kong was kind of falling off where Jaws came about, and the exact same thing happened with Jaws.
Right, and in a way, it's so Jaws kind of birthed the whole natural horror phenomenon, right? I mean, it didn't start with Jaws, because look at like 1963's The Birds from Alfred Hitchcock, right? Like natural horror existed before Jaws, but Jaws made it popular, and then King Kong 76 came around, and then you saw films like Barracuda and Grizzly and Piranha and
The Bees
and Phase 4 and Tentacles and Alligator, Crocodile Fangs. There was a huge Legend of Dinosaurs and Monster Birds was another one that came off of the heels of Jaws.
Right.
And so King Kong 76 was like that second wave of like Jaws influences, but highly successful. And then from there, you got films like Journey to the Center of the Earth and Yeti Giant of the 20th Century, The Mighty Peking Man, and just a whole swarm of late 70s Ape. Ape is another one. Late 70s King Kong influenced films. So it's very interesting, like Jaws to King Kong to like all these like knockoffs and cheap films and foreign films and whatnot.
Right, yeah. And then interestingly enough, in this film's case, it also comes off the Dino De Laurentiis's interest in making his own Yeti film.
Yeah, because, so from what I read in the Italian sources, Dino De Laurentiis, when King Kong was kind of up in the air, announced a film titled Yeti the Abominable Snowman, which he was going to shoot on location in the Himalayas, written by Giorgio Moser.
Yeah.
But that ended up getting
written by him, but it was like based off a story by him.
Gotcha. And like that was going to be made, but then King Kong went through, so then he canned the Yeti idea and went through with King Kong. But they took influences from that story and utilized them here in Yeti Giant of the 20th Century.
Right, which the Giorgio Moser claims that basically the idea was stolen from him by director Gianfranco Parolini of this film.
Which, when this film was announced, under the title of Yeti Bigfoot. And this film 100% was made to cash in on King Kong. They even, they produced, a 9-meter animatronic to, use in the film.
Right, and I mean, it's worth noting that, part of the reason for that was because of the fame that Carlo Rambaldi, who was an Italian effects artist, got from his giant Kong for the 76 film.
Right, and it's important to note Dino De Laurentiis was Italian. So, King Kong 76 is, and it makes sense because it is very sleazy, too. It's like a big-budget Italian film. Essentially, a Hollywood-made Italian film. And so, and it did very well in Italy. Actually, King Kong 76 was #1 at the box office for that year. So
also releasing around Christmas time.
So it was a whole thing, and it did very well. So Yeti Giant of the 20th Century just wanted to cash in on that.
Yeah.
It's also important to note that this film was co-produced with Canadian companies. So this makes it one of Canada's only giant monster movies. The only other one that I'm genuinely aware of that's like a giant monster that's not just like Grizzly is 2020's Conga TNT, which is kind of ironic.
How unfortunate.
Yes. It was specifically shot in Toronto, Canada, but it was also shot at Lake Kamaposto in La Aquila, and it was also shot in Sincita and other surrounding locations near Rome, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Outside of that, I don't really have too much else to say that's particularly interesting outside of kind of going back to the whole aspect of the film's idea being stolen. There was like a small lawsuit over that briefly.
Yeah, I read that there was a lawsuit, but I didn't read what really came out of it.
From what I could gather, so it was ruled that the writer had asked that the film directors like couldn't use like the word Yeti in the film and whatnot, or at least in the title, but it was ruled that they could use that, they could call it Yeti and whatnot, but they had to change the title from the early title of Yeti Bigfoot. They had to change that, couldn't use that anymore.
And to my understanding, there's actually like 4 different title sequences as well. Like there's a couple of variants and edits of this film. So I don't know which one's the actual real one, but I know there's like 3 different versions. There's actually an alternate ending that was shot where the Yeti was killed, but that ending got cut.
Yeah, outside of that, I think that's generally the gist of like most of the context of this film. There isn't too much written about this, honestly, from what I had access to.
Yeah, really and honestly, I only know of like one true source in the English language. So I went to a couple of Italian sources and I got what I could from there.
Yeah, that's not basically what I did, what I could get from that.
Really, at the end of the day, this film, I think, is just honestly just an attempt to bring back the whole King Kong 76 thing. I mean, it takes a lot of influences. Yeah. It's also almost a 2-hour-long movie, which in of itself, I think, is a miracle for a film of this stature. Like, it's a low-budget knockoff.
I was genuinely worried when I was putting this on, and I saw the runtime was 1 hour and 43 minutes. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And in some regards, I still don't understand how it's that long.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, do you want to... I mean, we're kind of really breezing through this. Do you want to go ahead and jump right into the film?
Sure. We start off with some ice caps melting.
Yeah, we get a lot of stock footage of ice caps melting, which I thought could lead to like a whole thing about global warming.
You'd really think they'd make a statement about that.
And plot twist, they don't. I honestly, like, this film does have some like ideas of like commentary, but like they go nowhere at all with any of it.
Literally, yeah. It's like there's like this anti-capitalist bit in the middle, and with a certain, like, not really a main character, but one of like the side characters who's you'd kind of think would be the main villain at first, or even like a secondary villain, but isn't. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. And when we get to those points, I think we're going to actually have some pretty good conversation about it, because this film is kind of weird, and perhaps it's because I'm not well acquainted with Italian films.
Yeah, that is a blind spot for me as well. I'm not terribly familiar with Italian or Canadian exploitation cinema.
One thing I will bring up now is anybody who watches this film will quickly pick up on the fact that everything in this film is ADR'd. And that is because Italian cinema was shot in a way where everything was silent. It was like old style filmmaking. They were very behind the times. So everything was silent, and then they went in later, and then they put in the foley, they put in the dialogue, they put in the music, any sounds like that. So when you see the actors talking and whatnot, like there's a strong likelihood, first of all, that's not their real voices. Second of all, that's a dub that has been done.
Right.
And so that is what happens here. And so throughout the entire film, like you do see some pretty bad ADR and some pretty poor like audio editing, but that's just because that's how Italian cinema was. And that's really the only thing I do know about Italian cinema is just how it was made back then. And so for me, like that's one thing I'm not going to really complain about because that's just how the stuff was done back then.
Yeah.
Now, but back into the film, we get a ton of like establishing shots of stuff that's like actually irrelevant. Like we get a shot of a boat, and then we get a shot of some cities. We do get a nice podium shot that goes up to like the headquarters of the main villainous corporation that doesn't become the villain halfway through the film.
Yeah.
We like there's like 2 minutes of credits in here as well, which I think is really funny.
I will say, while the credits are going, we do get the best part of the film, the score.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Best part of the movie.
I disagree.
What is better than the score?
The writing.
Yeah.
Because of how bad it is. It's sometimes legitimately funny.
It was putting me to sleep after the first act.
That's a good way to establish how you feel about this movie. I laughed so hard.
I was having fun for like the first like 40 or so minutes, but after like the Yeti's like first rampage bit, after like they've tamed him in quotation marks, like after that it's a slog.
We'll get there.
Boring.
We'll get there. We do get about 3 minutes worth of credits, which I think is 3 minutes way too long. Well, not 3 minutes way too long. It's like a minute and a half too long. We do so. It's important to note that the director of this is credited as Frank Kramer in the credits, which was a pseudonym that the director went under.
Mm-hmm.
But during the opening credits, we get established to one of our main characters, Professor Henry Wasserman.
I will just briefly bring up that that's also a common trend in Italian cinema is directors go under pseudonyms.
Good to know. Yeah, because the Frank Kramer pseudonym he used actually before this film as well.
Yeah.
When I went and looked. Now, following the establishment of one of our main characters, we get like this really awkward introduction to this other guy who like is dropped down in this like business chair like contraption that's like really fancy, and he's like being dropped down from a helicopter.
Right.
And he just reeks of villain. He like
he's greedy capitalist guy.
Yeah.
And that is what the character is until the film just stops using him.
Right. And like he sits down and starts eating this guy's food, and they clearly establish they have like a history.
Right.
But they don't really go into it.
Right.
Which I thought was...
It's also just kind of weird. The beginning of this movie feels like it's positioning this character, Henry, to be the protagonist, but he isn't.
Right. No, they absolutely do, because he's our first character we're introduced to. And he is pretty prevalent for the first like 25 minutes of this movie. And then he gets demoted to like supporting side character.
Right.
And like also during this opening sequence, like we quickly cut, like we get the call to arms for Henry. And before he can even refuse the call,
we just cut directly to it.
Right, and it's like, what happened? Where are we? What's going on? Like, he's already there. We don't even get established what's going on. We just have to pick up on it from where the scene throws us. And that's kind of funny, but it's also just kind of jarring. And this film does that a lot. This is also where we're introduced to Cliff and our two main characters, Jane and Harry?
Herbie, if I remember what was his name.
Yeah, who oddly looks like a young Baron Trump, but I digress. I'm not wrong. I am not wrong. Look up a picture of Baron Trump and look at him next to Herbie. Identical. They could be twins. They're like melting the Yeti with like fire, which, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't it just be better to like use hot water and like melt the ice that way than like possibly burning the Yeti? Because like they're literally firing fire at its foot that's been defrosted.
Clearly the flamethrower is the safest way to get him out.
It's such a weird way to do it. I think they just wanted flames. They just wanted fire.
Fair. I can't blame the producers for that, honestly.
Also, the fact that they call the Yeti, like so much, and it's weird because like sometimes characters will say Yeti, and then sometimes they'll be like the Yeti.
Yeah,
it's like what's going on?
And certain actors will just go back and forth between it.
Mm-hmm. But like during the whole defrosting stage, this is where we get a meeting between Henry and our corporate guy, and like
Morgan.
And they like talk about like how important it is to science and whatnot. And Henry's like, bring me scientists, bring me the press. Like, we're going to like research this thing. And he's like, yes, anything you need. Absolutely. And then immediately after the call, he's like, you're not going to get any of that. We're going to use this to publicize my company.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, so we are going the corrupt capitalist corporation storyline. Like that's where we're going. Like there's a board of directors and everything, and then we kind of get thrown the curveball with like the industrial spy too. But this film very clearly is setting up the corporate capitalist greed thing that like King Kong absolutely does as well.
Right. Yeah, and then it's so bizarre that the film, once it shifts gears halfway through to its with its twist of one of the supporting characters, Cliff, being our actual antagonist, it's so bizarre that we just drop Morgan completely as an antagonist.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. It's just really weird, especially because Morgan does have a deep connection because he is the grandparents to Jane and.
Right. Yes, he's the most connected to all
literally
of our
everyone.
Main characters.
He's Cliff's boss.
He's the boss to all of them.
He's friends with Henry, and then he's the grandparent. So it's like he's the connective tissue. He would be the driving force, the compelling force for everything. Right. He can offer Cliff more money. He can offer Henry more money and their friendship. Jane and Kirby are his like grandchildren, so there's a level of respect there. But none of that gets like they establish the whole Henry thing, and then they establish the Cliff thing very briefly, and then everything else is just kind of left hanging.
Right. I mean, this film kind of has an issue of establishing things and not doing anything with them, such as with the kid Herbie. He's a mute kid, and they kind of the way the dialogue approaches it with them, like trying everything to get him to talk again, like following the accident. You'd think at the end, oh, he's going to speak.
Yeah.
But no.
It sounded more like it was a trauma thing, not that he was like physically impaired from speaking. He's just
right. Yes, exactly. That's how it comes across.
But they also set up a really creepy love story.
Oh yeah, because she's a teenager.
When she was in this, 40. She was 16. She was 16 literally. When she was in this movie.
Yeah, literally. It's gross.
And he's like 47. It's like, what?
Yeah, literally.
It's awful.
Like, even if you don't know the actress's age, it's like, she's clearly 20 plus years younger than him.
Right. And they just like layer on that creepiness throughout the entirety of the movie, which is kind of why it's nice he becomes the villain, even though it is jarring. But it's really creepy up until then. It's still creepy then, but like at least it's like, okay, this is a bad creepy now, right? We're not rooting for that. We're not supposed to be rooting for this.
Right.
And can I also just say that like, so they like at the 5-minute mark, almost exactly, that's when they established like the Yeti's frozen. We spend way too much time defrosting this thing.
I guess
because it's about 15 minutes on the defrosting of the Yeti.
Mm.
Like it's not a full 15 minutes, but like it gets kind of
the thing is, in this chunk, we're establishing all of our characters and everything that should be important.
But most of it ends up falling flat. So it's
most of it ends up being pointless. But like at this point, like that's not clear. Like at this point, I think it's all like fairly fine.
Right. Also, the whole fact that Herbie's like really interested in the Yeti, and then the Yeti's more interested in Jane. Like they don't really get a very good connection.
Herbie has very little reason to even be in the film.
Yeah. I think you could cut his character out and it wouldn't change the plot literally whatsoever.
He contributes like one thing to the final act.
Does he?
Like he overhears the villain's plan.
Okay, but that could have been Jane.
Yeah, I know.
They also established that he's the one who found the Yeti, but it's like, okay, cool, but like we don't even see that.
Right.
Show don't tell.
Yeah.
Also, I do think it's really funny that their solution to the like defrosting the Yeti after like firing it with a flamethrower is let's chain it up, put it in this weird like capsule, and fly it up into the sky.
Yeah.
And they like
I appreciate how the size changes dramatically in this scene.
Yeah.
Where he's like looks about like 7, 8 feet when he's lifted by the helicopter.
Right, and then he becomes like 30 feet later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think it's funny. So when they take him up into the sky, they're like trying to shock him to like ignite his heartbeat, which like later becomes one of the main opening story plots for King Kong Lives. I thought that was pretty funny. They also say it's the Yeti, the giant of the 20th century, or something like that in this whole scene. And I'm like, oh my God. Title drops in movies kind of make my eyes roll. Especially when they're stupid like that. Also, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a little over 15 minutes until the Yeti's officially like awake.
Yeah.
So, like, it is about 15 minutes worth of defrosting the Yeti. Also, one thing that I was confused about, so the Yeti gets defrosted and awoken and it's all good, right? But very clearly before all of this, like whenever Henry's talking to Morgan, he says, I need you to bring paleontologists and scientists in the press. Did they get any of that? Because he said he wasn't going to, but they still had press there. So, like, did he end up getting what he wanted? Or did they, like, cut the funds? Or, like, I feel like they very quickly established that Morgan's a villain from the get-go, and he's not going to help, but then he seemingly did help.
I mean, I kind of took it as, like, the people who were taking photos were, like, maybe just, like, the crew members, not necessarily the press. Like, the press kind of came in later, like, in later scenes.
But isn't there also just a lot of random people, like, watching the Yeti?
I mean, again, I took it as, like, the team that was defrosting him.
I don't know. There's, like, women and children.
Okay, you might have a point there.
It's just really weird. It's like, okay, so like, did they invite
Maybe it's
people?
the families of the team.
Oh, so it's a whole Los Alamos situation.
Yes.
HH Industries has their own Los Alamo, and it's defrosting a Yeti.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
It was just as impactful as the Trinity bomb test.
The Trinity bomb test. You have the Trinity bomb test, and you have defrosting the Yeti of the giant of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Same level.
Both historic moments in mankind's history.
Mm-hmm. They end up drugging the Yeti, and he passes out for like 5 minutes until he's dropped. And then like they get out and they look at him, and then the Yeti's awake again pretty quick.
Shockingly, he breaks out.
And he gets angry and loose really quick too. They're like, don't anger him. And then like he gets angry the moment he wakes up. It's like, what did you expect?
I mean, he gets angered by literally the same thing as King Kong as well. Like all the flashes. No, like all the flashing lights.
Oh, yeah. I kind of took it as he got angry at the dog first and then the flashing.
He loves the dog. He becomes friends with him at the end, basically.
This is true, but at the beginning he kind of seems like he's annoyed at the dog.
Sure, yeah.
But he does break out, and he rampages in like a... It kind of reminded me of King Kong Lives with like all the rednecks and whatnot. That's kind of how this kind of rampage felt to me.
See, I was thinking of King Kong Lives and how in that film we kind of talked about how visually kind of boring the presentation was with the miniatures, and so like the lack of miniatures in the foreground, I think, was something we highlighted.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, here, because the Yeti is for large part like blue screen composited in.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of blue screen.
Because of that, I was thinking, man, maybe we were almost too harsh on King Kong Lives in that regard.
Yeah, the blue screen's not very good, and like
because the thing is, it just makes it feel like there is literally nothing tangible for him to interact with in the majority of this sequence, and even his main rampage later in the city. He has very little to interact with.
He only interacts with a handful of miniatures, and a lot of miniatures are cut to and are separate from him. And
they're also very under-detailed.
Right. And they do this thing where they'll cut to like low-angle close-ups where he's blue-screened into scenes. And it's like, you can very clear, because for some reason, the Yeti is like out of focus in comparison to the background. And so the Yeti's just blurry for the vast majority of the film. And it's just, it's honestly probably some of the worst blue screen effects I've seen, if I'm gonna be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, it's not like, oh my god, this is atrocious. It's just not good.
It's just that it's used too extensively. So it ends up calling more attention to itself than it maybe even necessarily deserves.
Right. Speaking of which, the sudden turn of like Henry being like really weirdly stupid, because like he tries to stay, like they shoot the Yeti, he gets angry, and he goes to like kill.
Oh yeah, and then he just accepts his fate.
Yeah.
That's what Cliff saves him.
It's really weird. It's like, oh god, it reminded me of a character. I think it's Jurassic Park. No, I don't think it was Jurassic Park, but it's like a cliche, right? Where like the doctor, like, oh, kind of like, honestly, this film has a lot in common with The Thing from Another World. Like, found in an iceberg, or found in like a thing of ice, melted and released by flamethrowers. The doctor is crazy and wants to like save the creature, tries to sacrifice himself for the creature, goes on a rampage multiple times. Like, it kind of does have a lot of things in common with The Thing from Another World. But that's kind of like crazy scientist is definitely what he covers. And like after this moment, like this scene, he does get like put into a side character role for basically the rest of the film.
Right, yeah.
Which is
you'd kind of think that either him or Cliff would be taking more like of almost like a Jeff Bridges in King Kong role by this point, which is kind of what they do, kind of. But it's like, I don't know, they just go looking for like the kids and then they find them, and that's more or less it.
Right, because they kind of set up Cliff as like the Jeff Bridges character.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he is like 20 years older than the girl.
Right.
But like that's kind of how he's very obviously set up. Which is why it's kind of weird that he has his weird villain arc later on. Because like for all intents purposes, he's supposed to be the hero of the story. Like he's the Jack of this story.
Right. And then if not him, it'd be like the paleontologist, Henry, if Cliff isn't. But then Henry just isn't that either. He dies near the end of the film.
Right. And it's like the most unceremonious death ever. Dude gets punked up against a locker and just dies. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So the Yeti runs amok, throws trees at rednecks.
Kidnaps the kids.
Which doesn't make a lot of sense, but okay, it's a King Kong
we've got to
story.
go through the King Kong beats. And we got to have a close-up of the Yeti's nipple special effect.
Yes, the Yeti nipple, which I
could not believe my eyes.
Yeah, it's, again, the fact that like somebody was paid to build a Yeti nipple prop, I think is ridiculously amazing.
I watch a lot of
porn.
No, I watch a lot of just weird ass movies.
Porn?
This might be the grossest thing I've seen in a movie.
Really? Have you watched The Boys?
Yes.
Are you sure?
The special effect for the Yeti's nipple getting hard and just that close-up of it is more gross than even the Ant-Man scene in The Boys.
And then the close-up of the Yeti reacting to James touching. You have to give the actor this. He does a great job at actually acting.
He's great.
Like, this was his second role ever, and he does such a great job.
He is the most memorable and interesting part of the movie outside of the score. And that one close-up, of course.
Yeah. Eventually, the Yeti finds this, like, I guess, spot where he can set down the kids, and then the kids tell the dog to go find people.
Right.
And then the Yeti traps them. Like, this is the King Kong Skull Island stuff, right?
Right. I mean, this is a whole scene with, what's the actress's name? Jessica. I'm blanking on her name.
Antonella Interlungi?
Oh, I'm referring to the King Kong actress.
Jessica Lange. Jessica
Lange. Like, it's the whole bit with her.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then the dog does find everybody, and then they just follow the dog, and then they find the Yeti, and they find the kids, and they're all befriended.
So, like, the problem is solved within, like, 10 minutes, if even that.
Now, here's the problem I have. So we spent 3 minutes on opening credits. We spent a minute establishing our setup. We spent 15 minutes thawing the Yeti. We've spent probably about 5 minutes on the rampage. And then the last, 10 minutes has been the Yeti with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even established that much. It's just been the Yeti walking around, letting the kids down, and then having fish and befriending them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just not a lot that goes on. It feels very empty. And we're 40 minutes into this movie. By this point, we would be like, I would feel like a little closer to like the climax than we actually are.
Right. And the thing is, I would say this is still at the point where the movie's entertaining.
See, I'm curious as to where, whenever we get there, like where you think it's no longer entertaining. Because honestly, I'm going to be real with you. I was no longer entertained about 10 minutes into the film. It just started to become noise. I never once was like, oh my God, I can't wait for this movie to be over.
Pretty much after this point, it's kind of just noise for me.
Where
once we get to the monster, like the city rampage, I'm just kind of falling asleep.
Right. Now, it's weird to note that, like, they bring the Yeti back, the Yeti follows them, and then we immediately cut to them, like, exploiting the Yeti for, like, food and gas and whatnot, which, again, is like King Kong 76, but they never truly villainize it like they should. Like, it's a bad thing, that's what leads to the Yeti rampaging, but we never really get the whole...
There's no resolution to it.
Right. Also, there's this weird moment where, like, they cancel the press conference, but then they go to another press conference. Like, they have, like, this whole area, and then they're like, Cliff drives up and says, press conference is canceled, and then they're like, we're taking the Yeti to Toronto. It's like, what? That's what we're doing here? The funniest thing in this entire movie is the fact that Morgan's getting a shave and Henry's like, if this was a perfect world, your slave there would just slit your throat right now. And Morgan's like, what do you think? And he's like, I don't remember what he says, but it's something really just stupid.
No, it's like, do you want me to cut closer to the throat or something like that?
Yeah, and it's like, whatever. And then they, like, move on. It's like, what?
No, that's a fun joke. I'll give the movie that. That's a funny joke.
It's funny. It's just really, like, out of nowhere. Speaking of out of nowhere, like...
It's not entirely out of nowhere with how antagonistic Henry was at the beginning to Morgan.
That's true. But see, at this point, Henry has become just designated, like, side character.
Right.
Who does nothing.
Right.
But speaking of, like, designated side character doing nothing and kind of out of left field stuff, immediately after this, we get the villainization of Cliff a little bit because he's like, I'm at the hands and feet of Morgan. I'm not going to help save the Yeti. And then Jane and Herbie are angry, and then they storm off.
Right. And then shortly after, it's established that there's a whole rival company.
Which is a really weird, like, thing because the Yeti gets brought to Toronto, and then we get the establishment of the second company, which the whole Cliff thing was kind of left field and a surprise, which I'll give the film that. I didn't see that coming. But it really does just kind of confuse you. I don't know. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah. I mean, there's no real setup for it prior.
Right. And honestly, the whole idea of the second company is kind of lame. Like, I feel like it just doesn't go anywhere.
I think it's just the issue with that. Again, you've got, like, this whole anti-capitalist thing that's going on. Like, a second company, not a bad idea inherently. But they don't actually link that to the theme.
Right.
That was just being, like, driven into your head moments prior and then even moments right after.
Right. And as soon as they establish the second company, they start to move away from HH is a bad corporation.
Right.
And that's why, like, this film just feels like it's narratively and, like, thematically just disconjointed.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they're kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
that's a good way to put it, actually.
one thing that does stick, and one thing I will give you, is the Yeti disco song is a banger. And they have a whole parade for the Yeti while he's like on his way to like this rooftop while the disco song plays. Which, by the way, Morgan's there, and so is like all the other crew, and like the Yeti does break out King Kong style, but like the only person that actually gets affected is Jane. Every other character is like fine from the Yeti.
Mm-hmm.
But to that point, we are like almost an hour into this movie, and honestly, the plot almost feels like it's not even there, right? It just kind of feels like a
lot
bunch
happens in this film.
No,
that is an hour and 40 minutes long.
It's a film that just kind of, you watch a bunch of moving pictures move, and like there's a plot, there's a sequence of events that occur. I don't know if there's really a plot. There's not no character goes through development in this story.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a character that develops. There's not a character that changes. There's not really any dynamic character that has emotion. All of our characters just kind of stare and gasp and move on.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
It ends up, I wouldn't even say it's wild. It just makes the film mildly boring.
And like another moment of like mildly boringness is like the Yeti like starts playing with like an elevator shaft where Jane's in it. And it's kind of it's a cool idea, but it's just so boring. It's just this repetitious like cutting back and forth, the people screaming, the Yeti playing with like the wires, and that's it.
Oh, well,
like
that bit's kind of funny. I think that bit's a little funny.
I got a little bored with it after a while.
I get bored with basically everything after that. Like after that is pretty much the point I'm checked out of the movie.
I enjoyed the Yeti climbing up, and we just get a ton of different reactions of the Yeti, like climbing. Like at one point he kicks a dude, like he busts his foot through the window and he kicks a dude. I thought that was pretty funny. Like, there's some funny moments in this film that are just kind of charming.
Yeah, sure. Kind of like Megalon almost in that sense. That there's just a couple of just these brief moments where it's mildly funny.
Also, the fact that like after this, the Yeti's literally just walking through downtown Toronto, and there's not that many people reacting to it. And there's not that many, like, there's no National Guard or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of surprising that the Yeti doesn't die here. And this is this is where if this was a King Kong story, it would be over. The Yeti would die and we would be done. But because they established the whole second corporation thing, then we have a whole nother 30 minutes. Like, this film could be over at the 70-minute mark easily.
Right.
And they kind of set it up where it could happen because the Yeti gets wounded and, like, is on life support. They could have ended it at 70 minutes easily.
Yeah.
But instead, they have to continue this story with the whole second company thing.
Right. Yeah, but the police go looking for the Yeti as Jane hides him in plain sight, I guess.
Yeah, it's really weird. Because it's a car company, right? And they just so happen to be partners with H&H. So they're like, we'll go there.
Go to the warehouse. Yeah. I do appreciate the point near the end of the movie where the Yeti is just suddenly bigger than the warehouse. I think that's funny.
Yeah, the Yeti changes a lot of sizes in these scenes.
In every scene.
Yeah. Scale doesn't exist, but that's fine because King Kong didn't really have scale either.
This is true. I just think it's a little. I think it's a lot more obvious in this film.
I would agree.
But yeah, during this warehouse bit, this is where he is injured, and so he's on life support. And villains from the second company attempt to assassinate the Yeti, pretty much.
Right, and then Jane and and the kid, they run off to try and get, who is it? Is it the medics, the police?
Yeah, they get the police.
Which is funny
up.
because the police were like the ones chasing
literally
him.
were looking for the Yeti.
Yeah. And so while they're off getting the police, the doctor is left alone with these two random guys who end up killing him. And it's like the most brutal, but like boring death ever. They just bang him against the locker until I guess he hits his head hard enough.
A lot of the kills in this are kind of lame. It's a bit disappointing. Especially Cliff's death at the end where it's off screen.
Right.
Like the guy the movie wants you to hate. Like, come on, this is an exploitation film. Give us the goods here.
Right. And then like the two villain like second company guys like blame the Yeti, like they're framing him. But like then everybody's like, we're gonna kill the Yeti. And then like the Yeti wakes up and they're like, we're gonna kill him. And then he ends up killing the two side villains and goes on another rampage because the kid ends up getting kidnapped, right?
Yeah.
This is also where we get the whole Yeti foot death, where the Yeti uses his toes to like choke a dude to death.
That's pretty funny, I won't lie.
Yeah.
He doesn't, it like, could just stomp him, but no. Squeeze him through the toes. Oh, the dog dies as well.
Oh my god, that's right.
Marks.
They kill the dog. That's right. The dog dies. The Yeti like uses his saliva, wipes it on him, and then goes on a rampage. That's after I think the Yeti kills the people, and then like Cliff shows up, kidnaps the little kid, tries to rape Jane. And then that's when the Yeti shows up. And then that's when the dog dies. And then the Yeti chases after Cliff and his men.
Right.
And then we get like a 5-minute long car chase sequence. That's kind of boring. And then the Yeti shows up at the very end. Like of the like cars getting to, like he destroys like 2 of the cars. And then like the main one finally shows up. And then like the 2 guys die like by jumping off and falling
they jump
to
off
their
a cliff and die.
Yeah. And then like Cliff gets out and like tries to use like a firework and misses entirely. And then tries to ram the Yeti with like a truck. And then jumps out.
I will say, actually, I forgot to mention, but this film does have in this scene specifically and a couple others, there are some fun. There's some fun camera work, and earlier on, there's also a couple nice lighting touches. Like when the Yeti is first discovered in the ice, there's a shot where it's focused on the Yeti, and then there's just a little bit of like this red light that appears from inside, just for this little bit of dramatic flair. And it's I really like that. They use that a couple times in the film, and it's always awesome.
Yeah, there's some nice moments like that. There's also some decent camera angles for the Yeti, like just looking up on him. They remind me a lot of like Ultraman camera. There's some like nice like lens flares, like low angle shots of like the Ultras standing. There's a couple of those in here with the Yeti.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's not amazing, but there's just like just a handful of these little moments where the movie looks legitimately quite nice.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree wholeheartedly. Cliff's ultimate demise is, like you said, off screen. He gets stepped on.
Yeah.
Which I'm pretty sure that issue happened in, is it King Kong Lives, or is it 76 where that same issue happened?
I don't remember.
I think it might have been 76.
I don't remember how the villain in that died.
I don't even remember the villain.
He was greedy capitalist dude.
Great, that summarizes it so quickly.
That dies in the scene with the big animatronic.
Yep, don't remember.
Don't worry, I don't remember how he dies.
Good.
I think I vaguely remember that his death was like, oh, it was like a reshoot or something because of test audiences. That's the most I remember.
That's
about.
right, because he did survive, and they're like, no, he's got to die. That's right. I don't remember him still, but I remember that.
Yeah, that's all I remember of his death.
You know, this final, like, few minutes in Yeti is kind of like Godzilla Final Wars. Like, the Yetis killed the bad guy, and now he's just kind of standing there angry. And, like, all these police officers show up with, like, their tiny rifles. Which, by the way, why are you showing up with rifles when it's a 20-foot tall Yeti? Like, would you not bring a tank? Like, a tank would put that thing down easily.
I mean, hey, it seems like they didn't really need the tank.
Yeah, because the Yeti was going to die.
Yeah. And from how the movie portrays it, the rifle's pretty effective against him. Yeah, as he leaves, we get a beautiful reveal that the dog is still alive.
Right, and then, like, Morgan shows up and, like, the grandkids are happy.
We get, like, a whole, like, a minute of, like, a slow-motion run between Herbie and the dog reuniting.
Yeah, which, does that mean that Yeti saliva is actually, like, healthy? Can that save lives?
That is not at all how I took any of that, but I'm happy for you that you think that way.
Maybe the Yeti saliva is actually what, like, maybe they should become a pharmaceutical company and sell Yeti saliva. Like, guaranteed to heal your wounds. Have you been stabbed by a corporate henchman? Don't wait. Buy some Yeti saliva and smother yourself in that, and in about 4 to 6 hours, you will feel better. Get your Yeti saliva at the local H&H store.
Right, man. Whatever you dream about.
And then we get more ice and more Yeti, and then we get credits.
The end.
And then, by the way, the theme song is called Yeti, and it's performed by the Yetians.
That is, in fact, correct.
And like you said, that is it. Man, we kind of glossed through that a lot faster. There's just not a lot in this movie.
Right. I don't have a terrible lot to say on a lot of it.
It's kind of bad.
No.
But okay, I will say this. I will say this. This isn't like Red Tears is boring. This film isn't.
I will give this. It is a step above Red Tears and what was Kibakichi. Mm-hmm. It was nowhere near as boring as Kibakichi. Dear God.
But I think at the end of the day, this film suffers mostly from just a lack of plot.
Yeah, it's too paper thin. That is the issue. And then also just too all over the place as well.
Right. There's definitely too much going on. This film, if it reeled in, and honestly, if it stuck to the King Kong ripoff guns, I think it just would have worked out better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this film, you could cut 30 minutes out easily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have it...
100%.
Like, honestly, just kill the Yeti in Toronto and end it. Like, and here's the thing. The Yeti, while funny and enjoyable, like, the Yeti is the best part of this film.
Yeah.
I don't have an emotional connection because I never really get to see the Yeti have emotion. It's just kind of there. There's no emotion in this movie, and I think that's, like, it feels like a knockoff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like, it has fun moments, it's sleazy, but it's very obviously a ripoff of King Kong. And it just fails to, like, bring any plot together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think part of that, too, is just due to its crazy pacing. Thankfully, the pacing does make it so it feels like the movie moves a lot quicker than it actually does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is the one thing I'll give you credit to. Like, I was falling asleep in the middle, but at the same time, it still felt like it was going a lot faster than, like, when I was falling asleep, I felt like I was falling asleep at like the 40-minute mark, not like the hour or so mark where I actually was.
I know. I think I started checking the time around the 40-minute mark. That's when I was like, okay, how much longer do I have? Oh, I got about an hour. Okay. How much more? About 20 minutes. How much more? About 5 minutes. Okay. See, when I start checking times, that's usually when it's like, okay, like, where are we at? But no, I will say this. I do think it's fun, but honestly, it's weird because, like, I don't feel like a lot of people talk about this film in terms of Kongsploitation. I feel like Konga and Mighty Peking Man definitely take the cake for, like, Kongsploitation. And I get it. This film is just not that memorable. This film, like, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that I have that inside joke of Yeti nipples.
If it wasn't for that one close-up.
Literally. The Yeti nipples
shot is what makes this film memorable.
And it's not even a good thing. It's just kind of an awkward, funky thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, at the end of the day, this film just kind of, it exists, right?
It is an entity, an enigma upon the kaiju giant monster scene. And
honestly, I think is this our first Kongsploitation film if we don't count Godzilla Kong the New?
I think so.
Technically, Godzilla Kong the New Empire?
I don't count it. Yabba dabba do.
I count it.
I don't.
I think this is our other, like, outside of that's our first one.
Right, yeah, I believe so.
Because we haven't done, I don't think we've done any of the other ones. Yeah, no, we haven't.
I mean, we only just covered King Kong 76 earlier this year, so.
If you want to count Zillafoot, because Konga makes an appearance?
No, that's stretching it.
That's like additional viewing. Kongsploitation. If you really want to watch all the Kongsploitation, Konga from Konga TNT does make a 3-second cameo in stock footage in the 2021 extended film Zillafoot. That's definitely how that would be written into anything. But there are a plethora of others. There's like Mega Ape. There's King of the Lost World, The Mighty Gorga, Konga TNT, The Mighty Peking Man, Journey to the Center of the Earth. Mighty Joe Young, if you want to count that, both of them. So there's a plethora of other stuff that we could cover. You know, eventually I think we will eventually cover those down the road.
Right.
But this is definitely not the best of starting off points.
Right. I mean, from what I hear, it's not the worst.
See, I read that too, but the same person who wrote that I read also was like, this film is fun. And I'm like, is it though? But
if this is, but if this is what they find fun, what do you think the other movies are like? What do you think the worst films are like?
Well, I've seen Konga TNT. I know how that film is. Oh, there's also Ape versus Monster and Ape versus Mecha Ape and Ape Mecha Ape New World Order. Oh, God. We're going to have to cover that trilogy eventually one day.
Yay. Can't wait. God.
Are you ready for cast and crew?
Yeah. I don't want to think more about Ape vs. Monster and the others.
Your cast has John Stacy as Professor Henry Wasserman, who was in Planet of the Dead Men. Antonella Interlay, who played Jane Honeycutt. This was her debut film. She also was in City of the Living Dead. A Fauci zombie movie, by the way. Mimo Krau played Yeti. Matteo Zoffoli played Herbie Honeycutt. Luciano Stella played Cliff Chandler. Was in The Three Fantastic Supermen, Agent Joe Walker, Operation Far East, The Hyena of London, 12 Golden Women. Eldoro Faita played Morgan Honeycutt, was in the 1978 version of Lord of the Rings. Your crew included Mario DiNardo, who was your screenwriter and producer. Armando Biamonte, who was director of effects, Niccolo Pomilla, a producer, Wolfranco Cosia, a producer, and then Gianfranco Parloni, who was your another producer and your director, again credited as Frank Kramer, worked on The Three Fantastic Supermen, 12 Golden Women, Agent Joe Walker, Operation Far East. And that's all the cast and crew I got because, let's be real here, unless you're into Italian science fiction or horror, you're probably not going to recognize any of those names. I will say this, a lot of the people that worked on this worked with Mario Brava at one point during his career, and he's a very prolific Italian filmmaker. He directed Planet of the Vampires, which historically influenced the 1979 film Alien. He did a couple of like what became Hercules movies in the United States. So, you know, they worked with some pretty big people in the world of Italian cinema.
Yeah.
So that's what I got for you.
What is there left to say, given we don't really have a ranking?
There is no ranking. This is our last movie of 2024.
Yeah.
We started with Destroy All Monsters.
I see we ended it off with a real banger.
We started the year off with a real banger, and we ended with a real banger.
Yeah.
I think, wasn't Destroy All Monsters our first movie? I feel like it was.
Yes, it was.
Oh, good. Yeah, 2 boring movies. It was a boring sandwich. There were some bangers
What more could you ask for?
Honestly, though, I enjoyed this year's films for the most part. There was a lot more Godzilla this year, obviously. A little more King Kong, too. We did 3 King Kong movies this year.
This is true.
We finished the Showa era of Godzilla. We got most of King Kong done.
I came around to liking King Kong more as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we've wrapped up Cloverfield. We covered Zillafoot. We almost died for that one.
How?
We learned that Dai... It wasn't. We learned that Dai is the reason that the Japanese box office died.
Everything is Dai's fault.
Everything is Dai's fault.
Gamera vs. Gyaos' propaganda.
Let's see what else. We covered Godzilla Kong the New Empire. We wrapped up Kawasaki Month.
What a year.
What a year, honestly. You did a solo episode covering Yuzo. We covered the Yokai trilogy.
Hey, those were actually good. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Those were the only Dai films that weren't made with blood money.
Hey, there was also Daimajin.
Oh, that's true. Daimajin and Whale God.
Oh, that too. I almost forgot.
I forgot about that movie, to be honest. It was kind of boring.
It was good.
Rex, I mean, obviously we're going to cover this in the Convies, but out of curiosity, what are kind of your top... Let's do top 3. Top 3 favorite moments, like favorite moments in this year's movies we covered. Like moments in like recordings.
I thought us both just coming to terms with Gamera vs. Gyaos was very amusing.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my.
That was a highlight.
I'm gonna throw out the fact that I actually got angry at Ultraman Rising.
Oh, that was also really fun. I forgot that was this year. I'm gonna be real.
Yeah, Ultraman Rising was a forgettable movie. That's not gonna get nominated for Best Animated Feature.
I didn't think it had a chance, and I liked the movie.
Yeah, I got verbally angry at that one.
That was funny.
Is that your second one?
Sure, let's go with that.
And then you got to pick one more, and I got to pick one more.
I I can say a memorable moment that's not one of my favorites, but Zillafoot was certainly a watch of all time.
Mm-hmm. That one's fair. I'm trying to think what my final pick would be. Maybe, honestly, I really enjoyed the whole, like, looking into color, like, the history of color cinema in Japan.
Oh, yeah, that was actually interesting. That was interesting.
I enjoyed that. There's so much, like, I feel like there's a lot of information in this year's group of films.
Mm.
Like, I think this is season 5, now that we've retroactively created seasons. I think, honestly, this season's probably the most informative season we've done.
I would hope that as we go along, we are at least more and more, a little more informative as we do this longer.
Right. And see, honestly, I think you and I have learned so much from this year, and that means a lot to me specifically about, like, just how this is going. Because I mean, I feel like we've added.
I mean, our view on Showa Kaiju films definitely changed a lot.
Actually,
thanks to all the research.
Right. Honestly, another one of my favorite moments probably is the fact that, like, kind of re-evaluating the second half of the Showa era from, like, 1968 to 1975.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that's going to stick with me for a while. And, next year, we still have, I mean, in terms of Gamera, we're on to Viras, I think. Viras, and then Guiron, Zigra, Jiger, and Super Monster. So we still have majority of the Showa Gamera films to cover. And then, of course, we've got, I'm trying to think what else. Legend of Dinosaurs and Monster Birds. Is that? I mean, The Magic Serpent, any kind of, like, TV show, compilation movie kind of thing. I think that's about it in terms of Showa monster movies. Well, outside of the Toho stuff, the Toho, like, solo monster movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just very, I think we've covered a lot of ground this year, and that's going to make for an interesting, like, we've kind of, I think, almost completed the cultural, the contextual analysis of how these films existed in their times.
Mm-hmm. That was 2024, I suppose.
Well, we still got one more episode.
Yeah.
So next episode is going to be not necessarily a movie or a retro look, like a look back at the year, but it's going to be a look at what's to come, as our season finales always are. Because one thing we know about the kaiju genre is, just as Godzilla... It never ends, and even if Godzilla goes away, the things he has taught us remain. And the kaiju genre will forever live on in the world of Hollywood, or independent cinema, or Japanese cinema in big budget form there, or in anime, or in television.
Godzilla is in every one of us.
Are we just going to keep giving one-liners from Godzilla movies?
Sure.
Listen, Rex. There's 2 things you don't know about the Earth. One is me, and the other, Godzilla.
Peak cinema?
Scrye.
That was the most plain Scrye. Come on, you got to put the energy in it.
How about you give us...
I'm good.
Nope, you've introduced it. Go ahead. Give us the best Scrye that you could ever give us.
See, that was a little better. Now, if you just give it one more go and put all your energy in.
Nah, I think you should.
I'll pass.
Nope, you got to do it. This is peer pressure of the highest. Send us off before we do our send-offs with the Rex special of a Scrye.
No.
Do it.
What if I just go Scrye?
You gotta give us the best damn Scrye ever.
That was the best Scrye. That was the one I've prepared my whole life for. Scrye.
You are a disappointment.
Thank you. I need you to prove. I need you to do one better. You know, you got to prove me wrong.
Nope, I'm good.
Show your superiority or whatever.
I need you to be the best that no one ever was.
We don't need to start quoting Pokemon lyrics now, do we?
Gotta catch them all.
The life just faded through my entire body.
Well, I do have one last thing I gotta tell you, Rex.
And what's that?
Hello. I'm Elijah, and I have a Kaiju and Tokusatsu problem, and a problem of quoting things that I probably shouldn't. And if you ask one of my friends, she'll tell you I have a problem of not shutting up. Joking aside, I am Elijah Thomas. I'm a writer. I've written for GodzillaMovies.com, Kaiju Ramen Magazine, Kaiju United, of which I'm the Chief Innovative Officer for, and my writing has also been featured in the book Giant Bug Cinema, a Monster Kid's Guide from Bear Manor Media, where I wrote about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. I've also been privileged to work with my good friends at Giant Monster BS, Matt and Grattan, as a creative consultant on their most recent season, Season 2, where they cover independent kaiju cinema. Outside of writing and podcasting, I also served as a consultant on the upcoming Titanic Creations officially licensed Yongari articulated figure. You can go to titanicreations.com/Yongari to order yours today. I've also had the privilege to produce bonus features for SRS Cinema. I've worked on Yuzo, The Biggest Battle in Tokyo, Liverleaf, War of the Ninja Monsters, Jiren vs. Gora, and the upcoming release of Sharkdemic. You can order all of these Blu-rays on srscinema.com, and I believe Yuzo, Liverleaf, and Ninja Monsters all have wide-release DVDs you can get on mvd.com. I could be wrong, but I know at least 2 of those are available wide-released through various retailers. I'm also a filmmaker and YouTuber. You can check out my stuff on my YouTube channel, ET13 Productions, where you can see some of my short films and my old YouTube videos. Actually, I don't know if I've talked about this. My short film Rust, which was included in the short film Dissectoid, is available on YouTube now. You can go to kaijuconversation.com, go to the Appearances tab. Under my section of the appearances, under films, it's the very bottom one where it says director, actor, Dissectoid, segment Rust, and then there's a YouTube link. You can check that out. I'd highly recommend it. But my YouTube channel does also feature a playlist that features all of my appearances on YouTube. I plan on continuing to put out new videos, so definitely check that out. You can also check out my action figure photography on my Instagram at ET13_productions and my X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, thanks Danny, at the same handle. Now, Rex, where can people find you at?
Well, dear listeners, you can find me on YouTube at Rexino, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xeno. And if you want to check out some of my writing, go take a look at the Tokusatsu Network.
And as for the podcast, don't forget to rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, that's a lie, I'm reading this off of a MacBook, you can rate us on Spotify. To stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, head over to www.kaijuconversation.com to find all of our episodes, social media, news, and updates. Follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, you can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you. You can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually, we're going to have original artwork on there, but until then, you can sport our awesome logo on a t-shirt or maybe even a coffee mug. If you'd like to chat with us, check out our Discord server full of others that have similar interests to you. Recently, we had a discussion about Godzilla vs. Destroya and how it holds up in retrospective. It's a great community full of great people. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload a video. We sometimes post exclusive to the channel like bloopers for episodes or minisodes talking about news or other subjects. We also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Krzyzewski on the channel. I definitely butchered his name. I'm so sorry about that. And a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes and all the other content we upload. His links can be found in the description below. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DiManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals on our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Danzilla93_GNP or visit his website GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. And a huge thanks to Grattan Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following the podcast on Twitter at Giant Monster BS or on any podcast platform under the name Giant Monster BS. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. So thank you guys so much for listening. Our last film of 2024. What a doozy. Rex, it's been a great year. Thank you so much for another glorious year of Kaiju Conversation.
Thanks to you for being there as well.
And we're going to come back one more time looking at next year. And then we got the Convies coming up. You're probably going to hear a bumper for the Convies at the end of this. So don't forget to vote for that. Thank you guys so much for listening. It's been a great year. And as always, please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We are set, we are in debt, there's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. And not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.